Let's debunk one of the biggest myths in business communication. I'm sure you've heard of this adage: tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, then tell them what you told them. This is known as the T3 principle, and neuroscience gives us evidence that it does not work. It is important to address this principle because relying on it leads to forgettable content. And to get customers to do what you want, you must help them remember what you want. So let's add science to the T3 principle. First, why is this principle so popular? One of the reasons is because it announces order. With this principle, you're promising an organized, structured way of delivering a presentation with slides or without. The brain has a strong propensity for order, and this works across species. Some birds and rodents create boundaries around their nests, and if the order is disturbed, they know there is an intruder. The T3 principle also promises some repetition, meaning that you announce an important message in the beginning of a presentation and summarize it at the end. But this is where the benefits stop. So, if we are attacking the holy grail of presentations, what evidence do we have? And what can you do to impact your buyer's brain better? I'm extracting evidence from a neuroscience experiment I conducted, in which I randomly assigned B2B buyers to 4 groups and recorded their EEG, ECG, and GSR signals. During the experiment, I invited participants to watch a virtual sales presentation on a tech solution. I asked them to remember as much as they could, so later they would be able to decide if they would hire the vendor who presented the solution. All groups watched the same presentation, with the exception of how frequently they heard the main messages that I wanted them to remember. Why is it important to present something frequently? Repetition is the mother of memory, and customers make decisions based on what they remember, not on what they forget. One main benefit of repetition is cognitive closure. What does cognitive closure mean? Your brain is constantly constructing knowledge to function well through the day. This is because anytime you make decisions, you need knowledge. You need knowledge when you make mundane decisions, such as what to eat, and you need knowledge when you make sophisticated decisions, such as what tech solutions to buy. But not all knowledge is the same. Your customers will appreciate you more when you offer them knowledge that is decisive versus knowledge that is ambiguous. This is because the brain seeks closure, meaning searching for definite knowledge. This need for closure, by the way, derives from 2 general tendencies that all of us humans have: urgency and permanence. When people construct knowledge, they typically wish to obtain it quickly and hold on to it for a while. This is called a seize and freeze motivation, and when people achieve these states, the brain conserves energy. They can finally stop looking and take action. So now that you understand this, you realize that the T3 principle only offers cognitive closure twice: in the beginning of a sequence and in the end. Is this sufficient to influence how customers process content and remember it later? To add science to the T3 principle, I designed a study like this. Buyers in Group 1 participated in a fluid presentation with no cognitive closure. This group represented sellers who often say to customers, "Let's just have a conversation." Group 2 watched the same presentation, except they were exposed to cognitive closure once through an agenda. Group 3 was exposed to cognitive closure in the beginning and the end. This was the infamous T3 principle group. And Group 4 watched the same presentation, including an agenda and summary, but the main points were repeated or closed more frequently, about once every minute of the presentation. All participants received a memory test after 48 hours. So what did we find? Participants in Group 4 who were exposed to more cognitive closure had low cognitive workload, which supports the notion that with increased repetition, therefore familiarity, the brain does not have to exert extra cognitive energy. Buyers in this group remembered the main points with more precision compared to the T3 condition. They remembered more nuanced details and understood the content better. 20% of the participants in Group 4 were able to state verbatim these 3 important points. No buyer in the other groups was able to achieve this precision. Verbatim memory, by the way, is essential if you want to distinguish yourself from competition, so it is practical to help customers remember lines from your content verbatim. It also feels good, too. Think for a moment of classic scenes from movies like The Shining or Titanic. I bet you looked at the scene and said, "Here is Johnny," and not "Johnny's about to enter the room." And here you probably said, I am the king of the world and not I am the ruler of the earth. It is commercially impactful and emotionally satisfying to create content that audiences remember verbatim. By the way, Group 1, no cognitive closure, and Group 2, seeing just an agenda, did not perform well. They reported low memory scores, and having just a fluid conversation like buyers in Group 1 led to the highest level of fatigue. Group 4, the one with the highest amount of cognitive closure, had the lowest level of fatigue. It was interesting to note that of all the groups, only the T3 group experienced a eureka effect. You know, that aha moment. Typically, that's a good thing, but not in this case, because buyers understood what's important in the beginning. Then they were reminded of it only at the end, the eureka, but by then the presentation was over. So, to add science to the T3 principle, offer more cognitive closure. We often notice in our science experiments that offering 6 to 12 times repetition of the same message in a 20-minute presentation helps sellers to influence verbatim memory. When you offer repeated cognitive closure, you free people from constant information processing, and decisions are more likely because you help customers remember your content better.